Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. I realized I forgot to put music in that time lapse. I saw some audio coming through. I don't know what that was. I'll have to check that out, see what that was. We've got kind of a quiet pattern here. Very pretty skies, but getting into, I guess, the doldrums, and I even looked on the astronomy calendar, and all we've got is a new moon coming up on the 28th. We've got a full moon on the 11th, and then also that's going to be the date of a penumbral lunar eclipse. So basically we're going to see the moon turn kind of orange out to the east right around dawn. Those of you who are driving to work on that day, what is the 11th? That's going to be Saturday. I don't know who's working on Saturday, but if you're driving to work that morning, you should be able to see that off to your east. And here's the weather pattern we've got across the U.S., and you can see a very drastic cool down across the south central U.S. High temperatures, as we're showing here, in the 50s in Texas, still hanging on to near 80-degree readings along the coast. Got 80 there at Corpus Christi, 78 there at, I don't know what LBX is, I forgot, but that's south of Houston. And also, likewise, pretty cool out on the west coast. Lots of 50s and 60s. And this is kind of what we're looking at as far as temperature anomalies, looking at things warm, basically along and east of the Mississippi River. Still got the warm sector out there, and then off to the east, that cool Great Basin air mass dominating things, and you can see that the source of our cool weather in the central U.S. is essentially from the Great Basin area. 500 millibar chart looking like this. Large trough across the north central U.S. into the western U.S. And when we see a trough aloft at 500 millibars like what we see here, that is cool air in the mid and lower levels. So, as you probably remember from previous webcasts, we go between the upstream trough and the downstream ridge, find the jet stream like that, and then we find our fronts like that. So that'll give us our first rough guess at where the front is. This is going to be at 12Z, so this is this morning at around 6 a.m. So if we take into account things moving a little bit, that's about where we're going to find the fronts on the surface patterns. And we haven't looked at surface charts in a while, so I'm going to load up digital atmosphere here. And I'll bring in some of that METAR data. And I can see Russia here. Might as well check out what's going on there in Russia. No data. Okay, I guess we'll be looking at Alaska then. Things pretty cool there, as you can see. Pretty much dominated by cold polar air. So we've got kind of an easterly flow across Alaska, and we've also got low pressure out in the Gulf of Alaska, or not the Gulf of Alaska, the Bering Sea out in this region. So warm temperatures out over the seas and cool temperatures inland. That gives us kind of a predominant flow from east to west in Alaska. And that's pretty much what we have going on here. Lower pressures off the coast and higher pressures inland. No data for Canada because we're right at the top of the hour. But if we bring this down into the south central U.S., you can see that front right there along the Texas coast. Looks like we're just now starting to get a cool down there on the Texas coast. And the high pressure area way up there in the Great Basin area. So we've got a 1028 millibar high. That's about the highest pressure I see, so that's our high pressure region right there, covering most of the west and central U.S. And things a lot quieter in California You can see a little bit of a pressure gradient starting to develop, and I think within a few days we should see that strengthen, and we'll get a little bit of Santa Ana flow there across California. So how about soundings? This kind of ties in a little bit to that footage I was showing you earlier with the clouds and the sunset. Let me roll that back here for you. Very photogenic sunset there, and almost what looks a little bit like Mamatus. It's actually a little bit of Virga falling out of the base of the cloud. Any idea what kind of cloud forms we have here in this video? Well, as you can see, we've got a lower cloud, and it looks like it's comprised of supercooled water. It's got kind of a black, opaque appearance. So that's going to be stratocumulus or stratus. That would be probably between about 5,000 and 11,000 feet, somewhere in there. And above that, we've got kind of a fibrous cloud that's going to be comprised of cirrus. And that's going to be, I don't know, that could be a little bit of supercooled water, one or the other. That's going to be either some altostratus or some cirrostratus, or thick cirrus. I'm inclined to think this is probably a stratocumulus layer. And one way we can sort that out is to look at soundings and meteor observations. So let me show you how to do that. I'm going to go to the METAR site at NOAA. And this is where you have to be a little bit careful, because some sites have ceilometers that go up to 12,000 and some go up to 25,000. So let's see what comes up here. This is Lufkin in East Texas, and you can see it's showing clear skies. And we definitely don't have clear weather out in East Texas right now. We've got that overcast layer. So this is a 12,000 foot ceilometer, not reaching that high cloud layer. And what you have to do is you have to use data at a larger airport, such as Houston Intercontinental. So you're going to get either better equipment or a human observer. And you can see we've got an observation here of 3 layers, 6,000, 20,000, and 30,000 feet. So this is pretty close to what we saw, and this indicates probably some low cirrus or high altostratus, and there's some stratocumulus right there. We'll pull up one more observation from College Station, and there we've got another cheap ceilometer, only topping out at 12,000. And let me try one more. We'll go to DFW Airport. There they're picking up a lot of mid-cloud layers. So probably a little bit more of that opaque cloud that you saw in that video. So we've got the cold air mass moving in and clearing things out. A little bit of shower activity across Mississippi and Alabama. And we'll go ahead and work out the frontal positions. So let me get that map set up for you. One way you can learn a little bit about frontal analysis and working out the position of all this is you can do a little bit of this also. You just go to mag.insup.noaa.gov. You can work this out for the 0Z hour and compare that to what I've got on the evening broadcasts. So we've got a thickness gradient across the southeast U.S. coming in through Arizona and northern Mexico right there. So that's the transition zone, and that's going to correlate very closely with where the jet stream is. So we're going to find that on that upper level chart. And the front will be just south of there, kind of in this area right here. So it looks like we've got our surface system a little bit ahead of what we were showing on that other chart, the 500 millibar chart. But back behind it, there's our cold air advection coming in from the north and the core of the polar air extending from Ontario into the Great Basin area here. All right, let me take a look at chat and see if there's any questions or comments going on. Got our regulars here, and I see Fred there. Probably not liking this cold weather moving on down from Canada. 5x5 audio, and Tom says the audio we had in the clip was wind. Okay. Fred making an observation at Grand Forks on Saturday. GFK, is that Grand Forks Air Force Base, the Air Force Base there? I know they've got RDR and GFK. I'm not sure which one that is. Maybe they repurposed the Air Force Base for a municipal airport there. Let's see. Everybody's saying hellos there. Sarah in Indiana saying it was windy there. Winds out of the west at 16. Temperature 37. And Sue missed us all, hoping for snow. Fred mentions their oscillometer goes up to 25,000, but it's not reported in the METAR. They have to augment the METAR observations. And Fred mentions GFK is public and RDR is the Air Force Base. Okay. Let's see, what should we do here? I've got the wind grids going, so maybe we can take a quick look at that and do a cross-section. And let's see, let me set that up for you guys. I'm going to take a look at the frontal surface, say from the Gulf of Mexico, just south of Alabama, maybe up to South Dakota right here. So there's our cross-section. You see it goes across Memphis and Kansas City. And let's construct that real quick. And there you go. You can see the jet there in yellow. The yellow is isotachs. The brown is, those are your potential temperature lines or your theta lines or your isotropes. And you can kind of see frontal surfaces in here. Looks like two of them, maybe one here. This would be across the central U.S. and then another one here. So this is this morning. And we'll row that forward. We can see things shifting south, and the main frontal boundary looks like it's right in this area. So above that, you can see the jet stream lies right above that. There's the core right there. And then you go up towards South Dakota, lower tropopause in that area, and the tropopause rises just a little bit as you go south. And you can see over the next 36 to 72 hours, things just kind of shift south towards the Gulf of Mexico. We see the jet kind of elongate out in that area. And the air mass becomes kind of homogeneous in the northern plains right here. So the potential temperature surfaces lying pretty much horizontal here. And it's where they're sloped here is where you have the weather taking place. Okay, let's see one more area we can look at. Maybe we can check out the northeast. Let's try just off the North Carolina coast across the front into Michigan. Set that cross section up. Okay, here's the construction of that line. And then we'll run that. Okay, so you can see the surfaces are kind of horizontal off the coast, and as we go inland, there's where we have our weather. Let me shrink that down just a little bit so you can see that better. Okay, So let's run that forward. You can see the very steep slope here of the frontal surface as the frontal system moves into the East Coast area. The jet carries the jet with it right there. That's a very classic look. If you look at textbooks of the isentropic surfaces and the jet core, this is kind of how it looks. And with the jet core right here, this is where you get the folding of the tropopause. So you get a little bit of that stratosphere kind of coming down the underside of that jet right there. This is up at about maybe 20 to 25,000 feet. And there goes our frontal system, and things kind of stagnate there in the Midwest. Okay, so I think it's probably time to head into the forecast and check that out. Get these charts fixed here. Okay, so here we are starting out for this evening right there. There's that front coming through Mississippi and the Texas coast. And for tomorrow's webcast, coming up on Thursday, we're going to see the front kind of stagnate there in the Gulf of Mexico. A little bit of pressure falls here in northern Mexico. This could be a potent area for development if we have enough upper air support. And that's where we would have to look at the 500 millibar chart and see what's coming down in this area. Great Basin high in effect over Idaho, Nevada, and Utah, and then east of that, strong cold air advection coming down from Canada. Then for Friday, just more of the same. The main front still well to the south. There's our area of weak cyclogenesis in northern Mexico under the influence of the Great Basin high out on the west coast. And it looks like the cold air advection has kind of come to a stop in the central U.S. You can see just only a couple of thickness lines out in that area. And they kind of parallel the pressure lines, so there's just not much advection taking place. Just kind of a cold, dry pattern. And then not much of a change really until Monday when we get this Alberta Clipper coming south. That'll be kind of a reinforcing shot, but you see it goes mostly into the Midwest. So the leading edge of there on Wednesday, February 1st, comes down into Kansas, and then it looks like that stalls. Maybe get a little bit of a backdoor front into Texas, but we're coming under the influence of this warm air advection here. So that's very quickly setting up, and that'll probably mean some bad weather in the northern plains right there. So we get a little bit of Pacific Northwest action that moves eastward. This is Saturday the 4th of February. There's our warm front right there in Oklahoma. And that'll shift eastward on the 5th, bring a new front down into Texas, and now finally we get some weather going on. So this is going to be a little over a week from now. So it looks like more of a cold pattern than what we've had over the past couple of weeks. Got kind of a lot of cool air coming down from the north. And looks like things kind of dry out there for California. We'll compare that with the Canadian model. Canadian model pretty much going for a similar picture here. Cold air advection coming down on the 27th and 28th. And then advection kind of stops as we get the thickness lines paralleling the isobars. Here's that Alberta Clipper coming south on the 31st. And then we start developing that new system here on the 4th, but that's the last frame I have right there for the Canadian model. Let's see here. I think that's probably about it. I wanted to compare the European model real quick. Let's see how that European model looks at around 192 hours. Now let's go to 216 hours. We'll go up to February 3rd at 12Z. So you can see the forecast for the European model. The bulk of the cold air is going to be over Quebec. And if we take the 5 Celsius line, that's going to run from West Virginia to about Des Moines, through the Dakotas, and then up to Calgary. So how does that compare with the other models? Let's go to the GFS and look at that on the 3rd. Okay, so you can see pretty much the same idea. A lot of cold air there over Quebec and Ontario. GFS has the 5 Celsius line a little bit further south and west. So the European model had it kind of like that. GFS had it even further west. So it looks like the GFS there going for a colder picture. Then we'll compare that to the Canadian model. And Canadian model looks like this. Bulk of the cold air there over Quebec, that looks correct. GFS had the 5 Celsius line way out here. The European model had it out in this area. And then the Canadian model kind of splitting the difference there. But it looks like there is some pretty good agreement there on the 216-hour point right there. And you can see a lot of cool air coming in from the north there with that very strong cyclonic flow there in the Hudson Bay region, high pressure there in Alaska, and that gives us kind of a north gradient there through Canada. So that's going to continue bringing the cold air south. And that'll probably keep that pattern in place probably through about the 5th, 6th, 7th, somewhere in there. Okay, and that's probably about all I got for tonight. Can't really make too much out of today's weather since things are pretty quiet. Let's see, Mike here says, had fun with wind grids last night. There's a help manual. Yeah, 300 pages, that's true. That is a big fat manual, and I'm kind of struggling with that myself. I guess during these doldrums, yeah, we might have to do a little wind grids course, maybe do some of the RAOB. I'll see what I can do there and give that some thought. Anyway, I think that's probably about it for tonight. I appreciate you watching, and hopefully we'll see you again tomorrow night. Have a good evening, guys.